If you ask me, this whole General Hospital mess is heading straight for a bombshell so explosive it could leave Port Charles reeling for weeks. Willow thought she was finally finding a way to keep Drew quiet, but the second she started playing with fire, she put herself on a collision course with a jaw-dropping twist that could destroy everything she has left. And now Chase may be stepping into the center of that wreck devastation, ready to sacrifice himself for a woman who has been keeping far too many long-buried secrets. But that's not even the craziest part. Right now, the pressure is coming from every direction, and nobody in this mess is thinking clearly for even 1 minute. Drew is no longer just a man trying to recover from what happened to him. He is becoming a dangerous threat to everyone who crossed him, especially Willow. He knows enough to make her sweat, and if he ever gets the full truth, then all hell is going to break loose. Meanwhile, Willow is trapped between panic and survival. She knows she crossed a line when she helped bring about Drew's paralysis, and she knows that if the wrong person starts talking, her entire life could collapse overnight. That is exactly why she keeps reaching for the one thing that soap operas always turn into a ticking time bomb: control. And once a character starts trying to control the damage, that is usually when the disaster gets even worse. But that's not even the craziest part, because Chase has now been pulled into this nightmare in a way that could change everything. At first, he looks like the one person who still wants to believe there is something worth saving in Willow. He sees the fear in her eyes, he hears the panic in her voice, and he convinces himself that he is helping her out of a terrible situation. That is how these things begin on soaps, isn't it? One small act of loyalty, one emotional confession, one promise to protect somebody who is drowning, and suddenly a good man is standing on the edge of destruction. If you ask me, Chase is walking straight into a trap without even realizing it. Willow has been leaning on him, pulling him closer, using vulnerability and intimacy as a weapon to soften his judgment and keep him emotionally invested in her fate. And once Chase becomes convinced that he is the only person who can protect her, that is when the real trouble begins. But that's not even the craziest part. The next move is where this story turns into a complete soap opera nightmare. Chase decides to take the fall and admit responsibility for the drugging of Drew, believing that he can absorb the damage and spare Willow from prison. In his mind, he is making the noble choice, the heartbreaking choice, the kind of self-sacrificing move that sounds heroic until it tears a life apart. He knows it will cost him, but he does it anyway because he has been emotionally manipulated into believing that Willow is worth saving at any price. That is the devastating part, and I do mean devastating. Chase is not just covering for her, he is putting his own future on the line and walking into the fire with his eyes open. And once the authorities start moving, it does not take long for the consequences to come crashing down. Chase is arrested, the evidence is dragged into the light, and suddenly he is the one facing prison while Willow watches the whole thing unfold with growing dread. But that's not even the craziest part, because while everyone is focused on Chase's sacrifice, Brennan is quietly sitting on the kind of truth that can blow this entire scheme wide open. That man has his own agenda, and you can bet he is not revealing everything out of the goodness of his heart. Brennan knows how to gather leverage, how to wait for the perfect moment, and how to make one revelation land like a wrecking ball. He has the receipts, the details, the proof that expose the real chain of events, and when he decides to speak, it is going to be a jaw-dropping twist nobody saw coming. The public story is going to say that Chase stepped forward on his own, but Brennan's evidence will show that Willow was never a bystander. She was at the center of the operation, pulling the strings, hiding behind other people's loyalty, and trying to use Chase as a shield. That is the cruel irony here. She thought she could disappear behind his sacrifice, but Brennan is about to rip that illusion to pieces. But that's not even the craziest part, because once Brennan goes public, the fallout will not stop at Chase. That is where this story gets truly savage. The second the truth starts spreading, people are going to realize that Willow was not just frightened and cornered, she was deeply involved, and she used every tool she had to protect herself. She used the emotional bond with Chase, she used his trust, and she used the hope that he would never let her fall. But soap opera logic is merciless, and the minute a secret like this gets exposed, every hidden motive gets dragged into the light. Chase may end up paying the first price by going to prison, but Willow will not escape that easily. Once Brennan's evidence lands, the authorities are going to have no choice but to revisit the entire case, and that is when Willow's own arrest becomes inevitable. She will be exposed as part of the scheme, not just as someone who made a mistake, but as someone who helped create the devastation in the first place. And after everything collapses, Chase is going to be left staring at the truth he refused to see: that he gave up everything for a woman who was already using him to stay one step ahead of disaster. But that's not even the craziest part. Here is the real bombshell, the one that turns this from a scandal into a full-scale soap opera implosion. Drew does not even need to wait for the courtroom to get revenge. Once he understands that Willow tried to keep him silent and that Chase was willing to take the fall, he has every reason to strike back in the coldest way possible. He can let the legal system do its work, sure, but Drew is not the type to stop at justice. He is going to want consequences, and not the kind that are neat and tidy. He could destroy reputations, sever family ties, crush any chance Willow had of keeping her life together, and make sure that every single person who helped cover this up feels the sting. That is what makes this so dangerous. Nobody is getting out clean. Chase's noble sacrifice turns into a prison sentence. Willow's manipulation turns into exposure and arrest. Brennan's hidden file turns into the final nail in the coffin. And Drew, standing in the middle of all this wreck devastation, finally gets the opening he has been waiting for. This is not just revenge anymore. This is the collapse of an entire web of lies. But that's not even the craziest part, because the final twist may be the one nobody in Port Charles is prepared for. Just when it looks like Chase has paid the highest price and Willow is headed for handcuffs, Brennan may reveal one more detail that changes the whole board again. Maybe there is another piece of evidence, another name, another secret buried inside this mess that no one has even considered yet. And if that happens, then the fallout will spread far beyond Willow and Chase. It will reach Drew, Nina, and anyone else who thought they were safely standing on the sidelines. So, yes, Chase may end up in prison. Yes, Willow may follow him there. But the real question is this: when Brennan finally tells the whole truth, who else is going to fall with them? And who is going to be the next one blindsided when the next bombshell hits?